And happy Friday, everybody. Good evening. It's once again time for another episode of Friday Night Beer Time with your host, myself, that big bird looking fellow they call Colin. Today is going to be a very jam-packed show. We've got three major topics I want to hit today. For those of you that might just be joining us for the very first time, welcome. This is Friday Night Beer Time, where we kick off a brand new weekend after a nice long week of working hard, where we take a look at some of the news, cultural stories, if you will, that have been going on over the past week that have caught my attention, or perhaps maybe some stories that I just didn't get to talking to on the main Salt the Streets podcast. Speaking of which, this episode of Friday Night Beer Time is brought to you by episode 143 of the Salt the Streets podcast, something that me, along with my brother-in-arms, the original Salt of the Streets himself, Donovan Phillips, my co-host over there at the Salt the Streets podcast, joined me here in the studio last Saturday, for a 6+ hour live stream where we discussed just a couple of things. Obviously, over 6 hours, there was a lot to discuss, but everything from, we took a look at some of our I guess what we're calling my unofficial nemesis podcast of Breaking Points, hosted generally by Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty. We broke down one of their segments they did on child labor this past week or the week before that. So we went through all that, broke all that down. We talked a lot about Ukraine and Russia, and just a myriad of other things. The link, of course, for that episode is in the description down below. And, of course, this episode is also brought to you by the latest and greatest Salt the Streets Book Club episode, the review preview monthly videos, hosted by Donovan, my co-host, again, over at Salt the Streets. This is the first video from the 2023 book club show, breaking down the first book of the year for the month of February was Discrimination and Disparities by the great and powerful Thomas Sowell. So Donovan did a little review of kind of everything that went on in that book, some of his main takeaways, and then previewed this month's book, where we are 3 days into reading the classic George Orwell novel 1984. If you are interested in any of those, be sure to also check out that video, description down and below, and be sure to follow us over on Twitter, because Donovan over at Twitter is at Salt of the Street. He's tweeting every day about the book club using the hashtag SOS Book Club. So be sure to be following that, checking that out. But you can catch him also on Instagram at alpaca_Donovan. I am at Big Bird Offie on all the things. And of course, for this video and all the other things, it's all Salt the Streets all the way around. And of course, be sure to subscribe over to patreon.com/saltofthestreets, so that you can get access to our monthly newsletters that we're putting out over there. We're a little behind this month. February kind of threw us all off, but we got those things coming out definitely by Monday. We're going to be seeing what we can do about that, but we've got a couple great pieces in the works. I'm writing something on national divorce, and Donovan's got some more law enforcement related readings that he's got going on. So we're putting those out. Should be at the latest by Monday, but follow us again on all those social medias to get updates for those. So what are we going to be talking about today? The first thing before we get too ahead of ourselves here, it's Friday and it's the beer show. So let's make sure we crack into a beer before we just get into all the nonsense. Today I am drinking something that's been featured heavily on the Salt the Streets podcast lately, the Groundhog Pale Ale by a local brewery called Rainy Days. Ooh, so we're going to pour ourselves one of these. We're going to give ourselves a nice cheers and our toast to everybody that's going to be joining us. And then we'll get into the shenanigans of the evening. And of course, I'm going to do everything I can, because it's a beer show, to just have the worst pour possible. And that's, of course, how we do it here on the beer show. A nice, 50-50 head to beer ratio is always what we end up doing. So that's fun. All right, so what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to have to wait for this thing to settle a little bit because it's Friday night. We're not dealing with like a 3-inch head right now. That's just not going to happen. We're just going to let that simmer. So today we're going to be, like I said, we're going to be talking about 3 different things. First off is going to be a kind of more culture war oriented type of story. And it all has to do with Hershey's chocolate and the Daily Wire. And I have lots of questions, but we're going to be taking a look at kind of a situation that's erupted around that just, I think, in the last 48 hours. I think, the commercial came out on the 1st, and then Daily Wire, I just started to see their things yesterday. So we're going to get into some of that, and then we're going to be looking at some media lies, how do I want to put this? There's some free speech and kind of aspects to something that was said on CNN by Chuck Schumer, one of their hosts, and then we'll be reflecting on some of the overall media lies that have taken place around that. Because it's just been, the last couple of years especially, have just been terrible. I mean, the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't know. We're just going back at this point. So we're going to remind everybody how terrible the mainstream media is by pointing out a few of their lies based off of this one clip that's making the rounds now. And then, of course, we're going to be diving into something that I love to talk about, which is electric vehicles, electric cars, and the stupidity around them that the government tends to do, because we have some movement here in the great state of Washington that is going to be possibly setting a precedent for other people to adopt. And it's pretty dystopian, and I look forward to sharing that with you, because there are no shortage of states that are willing to adopt this madness going into the future. So, as we get started, let's start with our lovely, fun culture war topic of the day. We're going to show you a quick little commercial that is put out by Hershey's Chocolate. But before that, my beer settled a little bit. I need to have myself a sip of this, because this is just it's going to get weird. So enjoy, everybody. Cheers.
My name is Faye Johnstone. I'm the executive director of Wisdom to Action. We can create a world where everyone is able to live in public space as their honest and authentic selves. See the woman changing how we see the future at Hershey's Canada.
All right, so there it is. Hershey's Chocolate's got a new ad for International Women's Day that was put out on March 1st that features a trans woman advertising their new Hershey's chocolate bar. All right, welcome to corporate media. I guess this is just what we're doing these days. But the thing that really makes this a story, in my mind, is the immediate rebuttal by the Daily Wire in a very similar fashion that we have seen before. So we'll go ahead and play this clip now, and we'll discuss.
International Women's Day is upon us again, and I love an international woman. But our friends over at Hershey's, they don't even know what a woman is. They've hired a biological male to be the spokesperson for their Women's Day campaign, and they're calling that campaign, and I swear I'm not making this up, Her-She. Hershey. It's humiliating. And it's the reason that I'm launching
Jeremy Boring.
Jeremy's Chocolate. We have two kinds. She, her, and he, him. One of them's got nuts. If you need me to tell you which one it is,
Look at Michael's
keep
face.
giving your money to Hershey's. But if you're tired of giving your money to woke corporations that hate you, and you're looking for a delicious chocolate bar from a company that actually wants your business, head over to IHateHershey's.com and order Jeremy's Chocolate today.
All right. So that was that. That's a real thing. This is a very reminiscent, once again, of the Jeremy's razor fiasco after, was it Gillette razors? There was a bunch of razor companies that kind of did a bunch of woke commercials and all this stuff, and Jeremy got really pissed off, and they're like, well, let's just launch our own company called Jeremy's Razors. And I got no issues with that. I'm a huge fan of this concept of, what do you call those? Why am I drawing a blank here? Parallel economies. There you go. You got companies that side one way ideologically, companies that side another way ideologically, and they're both open for business, selling essentially a similar to same product, and then you can take your money and your business to businesses that don't hate you. Cool. Like the concept. I'm here for it. I was a huge advocate of it when he did Jeremy's Razors, but more on that in a minute. In this particular commercial, they got the domain IHateHershey's.com. And so ideally, you go to IHateHershey's.com, and this is what you do. It actually brings you, it's a forward to Jeremy'sRazors.com, the same exact website where you can buy their razors. But now you can also buy their he, him chocolates and the she, her chocolates. Some with nuts, some without nuts. You could buy a 4-pack for $24.99, which I just think is wild. And it's a 1.5 ounce bar of milk chocolate with nuts or without again. So here we go. This is what we're doing. Are you going to order some chocolates from them with IRL, with IR, without nuts? Yeah, I'm not going to be ordering these chocolates, Kevin. Hey, thanks for joining us today. I'm not going to be ordering chocolates. You know why? Because as far as like the culture war items go and the businesses here, I'm not like ordering chocolate on the internet. I'm not just going to be buying these things just because I don't like eat Hershey's chocolates anyways. I generally try to stay away from candy because it's not good for you. And so I don't know why this was the one, man. I just don't know why this was the one. I'm very interested to see how this works out, how many people are going to be buying a bunch of chocolate. Valentine's Day's over, so we kind of missed that window. Maybe they'll get some of the national, the National Women's Month, because this is, now that Black History Month is over from February, now it's like Women's Month, so maybe they'll get some Women's Month. I don't know, man. There's going to be a lot of Daily Wire people, I think, that just buy it to buy it and just give them money, and then they'll get chocolate. But you shouldn't be eating this shit anyways, except in a very, very small amount and rare occasions. It's just, come on now. Let's be realistic here. I highly doubt that this is like top tier, fair trade, organic, high quality, high, cocoa percentage chocolate anyways. The amount of turnaround with this thing was really quick. It boggles my mind. The razors, I 1000% get it. It's a good product. They have monthly delivery services. It's a product that you'll use forever, and that's fine. I'm all about that, man. But I just don't get this one, man. It's probably not for me. Kevin says good for you. I'm just not into it. This one does not resonate with me nearly as much as the razors did. I don't use a straight razor or just a standard razor. I'm more of a shaver type dude, hence the beard and all that generally. But if I were to, I probably would get me some Jeremy's Razors, because that's a product that's going to be a long-term product that I'm going to use over and over and over again. Excuse me. If I want some chocolate, I'll buy like some non-Hershey's chocolate and do that whole thing. But hey, whatever. You want to buy you some Jeremy's chocolate? Go to IHateHershey's.com or just go to JeremyRazor.com and you can find them at the same shop. So there you go. You can get yourself some beard care and some his and her chocolates. So that's a thing now. I don't get this one. Out of all the things, this is the one you all right, cool, Jeremy. They're generally, Daily Wire is pretty transparent with their numbers. I remember when Jeremy's Razors first came out, they're very proud to talk about how many people they got signed up for that thing right away, and it was how successful it was. So hopefully we'll get some feedback on this, because I'm very interested to see these numbers. Of all the culture war things, man, this one struck me as like, what the fuck are we doing, man? We're really just doing the chocolate wars? The chocolate wars are on. Well, it's better than the next story we have, because this one it's laughable, but it's also kind of sad and terrifying. This is a clip from CNN in which one of their hosts is talking about the fallout around Fox News with their lawsuit with Dominion. I think Dominion's suing Fox News at this point, and if we all remember, I think we'll go over here in a minute in another article that I have talking about what they're going through. But as part of the discovery process in this lawsuit, a lot of the private correspondence with a lot of their main hosts and pundits on the show were released, indicating how when they were talking about the 2020 election and how there's all these different possible fraudulent things that happened. They didn't believe that. Well, when they were on the air, they pushed they pushed that narrative along, and so it kind of showed the duality between the pundits' personal opinions on what was going on and then what they were saying actually on their show, and all that kind of stuff came out in Discovery. And so this CNN host is talking to lovely Chucky Schumer about some of the problems they have regarding this and fake news and Fox News. And so let's give this a listen real quick, and then we'll discuss further.
Fox needs to reckon with the lies that it spread, and it may literally have to pay for the lies that it spread. But is it the role of government officials to demand that media organizations say things or tell media organizations what
Deborah?
to put on their airwaves?
Well, it's hardly the first time that people have said Channel 4 should have done this, the New York Times should have done that. That's not unusual. But what has happened here is, John, very unusual. This is not simply telling them what to do. This is telling them, showing them that they have hurt our democracy probably in a way that no other actor, maybe with the exception of Donald Trump, who used them, has done. And so when it's that vital, I think we not only have a right to tell Rupert Murdoch and Fox what to do, but an obligation. And I hope people from one end of the country to the other will call up Fox and say, do what Leader Hakeem Jeffries and I asked for, which is stop the lies, say they were wrong, and report the news. You may have a different way of reporting the news than someone else, fine, but lying is not part of that different way.
Okay. So, does this not make you laugh hysterically? Because, for one, Chuck Schumer saying, you need to stop lying is laughable already. But then to do that on CNN, who is probably one of the worst advocates, it's probably a tie between CNN and MSNBC, by the way. All of the major corporate press, TV news, they all lie approximately the same amount. Let's not kid ourselves here. They all have different biases. Excuse me for a second. Oh, too much of this seasonal crap still floating around, man. We had snow and shit out here a few days ago. It's not cool. Done with it. They all lie. They continue to lie. And now CNN's trying to take the high road with Chuck Schumer saying that CNN or Fox News should not be lying anymore, and they need to just report the news however they report it in their own little way, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so the exact context of what they're talking about here, right? This is from The Hill. Legal experts say Fox News on shaky legal ground on Dominion lawsuit. Fox News and its parent company face serious threats to their financial and reputational health from a blockbuster defamation lawsuit tied to coverage of the 2020 election that legal experts believe has a solid chance of succeeding. Dominion Voting Systems, which brought a $1.6 billion lawsuit, is a voting technology provider and argues Fox News defamed it by knowingly repeating falsehoods from former President Trump and his aides and allies that Dominion services were used to fraudulently elect Joe Biden to the White House. A slew of internal communications and depositions taken by Dominion as part of its discovery process has left many legal experts warning that Fox could be on shaky legal footing. Dominion argues the vignettes contained in its court filings demonstrate how top hosts and executives at Fox knew the claims being pushed by Trump's associates about Dominion were false, but aired them anyways. So just like they were talking about in that clip, these guys had their own opinions based off of these private communications and things that were not aired, and then they said something else on the air that was essentially told they needed to talk about these narratives because that's what Fox News wants to report, and so you guys need to talk about these things, and you generally need to side on this side of the things. Okay, that's fine. That's if CNN in turn was being sued by the Diebold company, whoever the Diebold machines were back in 2016, when they were saying the Diebold machines were the things that got screwed up. we'd have the exact same situation going on here. They all act exactly the same. They all do the same exact shit. The only difference I would assume at that point is that perhaps the people on the hosts and the pundits on MSNBC and CNN might like the smell of their own farts a little bit more than, say, Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity over on Fox News, because they're all indoctrinated in the same cult over there. Just like them reporting on Schiff said that there was Russian collusion. Yes, Deborah, and so much more, because we're going to get into that right now. I just wanted to point out a few examples of some of the mainstream lies that were pushed over the last number of years. This comes from New York Post. You'd be surprised how difficult it is using even DuckDuckGo, which I was kind of surprised, how hard it is to find a nice compilation list of various mainstream media lies. But I finally got one from the New York Post. It's an opinion piece, but it's not really that hard. The main cover one was from the 531 insurrection, where a group of Antifa or BLM protesters outside of the White House turned into a riot and then attempted to burn down St. John's Church across from the White House, and then later on got pushed out by various federal authorities. And then there was that famous picture of Trump walking over next door. The 529, Deborah, thank you, 529. Walking over and taking that picture. And they lied about that wholesale, where they just said the feds came out and tear gassed everybody that were, peacefully protesting and this, that, and everything. They tried to light the church on fire. They did light the church on fire, and it was ultimately put out and generally saved. So that was one of the biggest ones. The entire Trump-Russia collusion, the special counsel with Robert Mueller. We've got the lies about the, quote, Muslim ban, which was essentially something very similar to what President Obama had instated. They lied about the 2017 tax cuts that were put out there, saying that only the rich are going to benefit from that, which was not true. We had AOC going down and rushing the border and taking those terrible pictures of her crying on the fence as if it was like she was crying at this detention center where all these illegal minors were being housed, when it was really just an empty parking lot. How about the Ukrainian impeachment of Trump and the lies around that? We've got, what else we got here? They got, the Hunter Biden laptop. Definitely lied about that at the most inopportune time. And then simultaneously, as social media pulls it off, it just pulls all access to it. Massive lie that they all did. We had, what else did they put here? The voter ID being blatantly racist, the new Jim Crow, if you will. This was a really good one. I heard about this on the latest episode of Joe Rogan with Russell Brand, and it's just a couple minutes into it, and he demonstrates a fantastic lie direct from CNN.
Well, not just that, but the blatant lies that CNN was telling about it. When you had CNN and MSNBC and all these different cable news network shows calling it horse dewormer, when it was a drug that won the Nobel Prize for the inventor of it, is a drug that has had billions, literally billions of prescriptions filled. It's a drug that saved lives, a drug that's on the World Health Organization's list of essential medicines. And for them to have the gall and to have the sheer audacity to just out and out lie to people about what a medication is. And it's used on humans far more than it's used on horses. And that they were calling that horse dewormer to try to mock me because they knew that I was unvaccinated and I kicked COVID very quickly.
And do we remember this? Do we remember this specific lie from specifically CNN? Who are the ones now trying to stand on their high horse saying that Fox News is full of liars? Do you remember the story they ran saying Joe Rogan, controversial podcast host, says he tested positive for COVID-19? And then they showed this video of Joe Rogan that he posted on his Instagram. And they said they got it from Instagram. Yes, Deborah, the evil drug Schmeiverschmeckten, that one. The one that people have been taking for malaria treatment for a long time. The one that accidentally cured river blindness all over Africa. discovered by a Nobel Prize winning scientist over in Japan that has changed millions of people's lives for the better, and that, as studies keep finding out, might be more beneficial for other things as we go along. But do you remember this? Do you remember this? Where they? Oh, it's gonna have to play an ad. All right, so you saw that one compared to. We're gonna let that run real quick while I switch over. Compared to the actual video, where he looks just fine. And of course, it's all. Why is it like that on the? Oh, it must be just because it's Instagram. But they played his actual video with a filter of. Oh, come on, ads. Jesus, we're not doing free ads on the channel. There's, what is it, CNN.com. We'll wait for it to come back. Boom. All right. Where they doctored Joe Rogan's face to make him look like he's gaunt and pale and gray. When on his actual Instagram, I know it's kind of hard to tell here because, let me try something out here. We're going to do a little tricky poo because I think it's being blurred out because it's, and it still does it because it's Instagram and you suck, Instagram. But anyways, you're going to have to trust me on this one. That video right there has beautiful colors. It's a beautiful day out. This was, I believe, when he was still back in LA, perhaps. But he looks like a normal person. And they completely diffused the colors to make him look sick and gaunt, just so they can defame him. So CNN got no leg to stand on when we're talking about media lies. And for Chuck Schumer to sit there and talk about how they need to start doing things because, as government officials say, we need to make sure you're not lying to people. It was in Austin. He did move to Austin already, yeah, because he got out. Forget when he got out of LA, but it was real early on in the fucking pandemic style. So, yeah. But anyways, complete lies, and it's an absolute hilarious disaster that CNN, even today, is still insisting they have the high ground on this situation. And to be backed up by somebody like Chuck Schumer is even more laughable because, they're behind all the censorship with fucking social media. The Democratic Party, specifically, the ones massively behind all of the Twitter files that have come out that are looking at censorship of dissenting views. They don't want free speech any more than anybody else does on CNN. They side with them because they have the same narrative. So they're all pissed off about this because I think this is it's a good opportunity for them to come out and try to act like they're the holier than thou ones, because just due to this specific defamation case, discovery came out and some text messages and correspondence were leaked to show the duality of their pundits and their hosts of their shows and the narrative that is being pushed by the executives at Fox News. Literally no different than CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, any major, the New York Times, the Washington Post, any corporate press outlet, they do the exact same thing, whether it's on TV or in print. Hell, even if it's in audio form through all their various fucking podcasts these days, it's all the same trash. So it's just a little bit of hilarity, and they don't deserve to be listened to in this situation whatsoever. When people have as much distrust as they do in the institutions, this is why. This is 100% why. Yes, Fox News is getting the business right now, but that's just because they're the ones in the spotlight at the moment. It could be any of them. And unfortunately, depending on what the subject is, I'm going to trust that somebody like Tucker Carlson is going to be more authentic with his point of view than anybody else in any of the warring mainstream media corporate press outlets. That's just, he seems to be much more of an authentic guy in that particular persuasion, if you will. All right, shifting gears once again. Now, we're going to get a little local here. So forgive some of the more local Washington State centered pieces. But I think it's important to note that most of what's happening regarding, say, like green energy or green initiatives, we are on the front line of this stuff between California, Oregon, and Washington State. And these are all things that, if adopted, will spread throughout the country, because in any Democratic, in any blue Democratic controlled state or city, these initiatives will be adopted in the future. We are always the front lines to it, which is why even on the Salt the Street show, we talk about our local stories that are happening and stuff like that, because we're on the cutting edge of this stuff. I mean, we're the first across the goalpost. These people love to adopt green policies regardless of their outcomes. So this originally, this whole story came to me by an opinion piece that was in the Seattle Times. It says, Washington's pay per mile tax is not the culture war we need right now, says Danny Westnut from the Seattle Times. He's a columnist over there. So he says, testimony in the state legislature in Olympia is signaling that a big front in the culture war may be forming around the seemingly benign object, the electric car. I don't know how you call it seemingly benign, because it comes with so much baggage, but that's fine. I know some of you roll your eyes. They're zippy, cool, and battery operated. What's the big deal? But just the side issue of how to pay for states' roads as more electric cars deplete the state's gas tax revenues is inciting some incendiary reactions from the public of late. That is the note right there that is so important. I've talked about this a lot with other variations on the EV infrastructure problems that we have. For one, we don't generate enough power to charge everybody's EVs. Is everybody adopted an EV in the 2030, 2035 timeline that they're all pushing? But combine that with a further push to make our overall our electric grid more green, we're going to be losing out on more, and the amount of power that we generate is going to be lower. So not only can we not afford to have everybody charge their stuff now, not to mention the excessive cost of what that would be. Rand Paul said it'd be like the equivalent of running 12 different deep freezers in your house to charge just one electric vehicle full time. But we just don't have, we're going to lose out on the amount of the total energy that the state is generating from these green initiatives is going to drastically drop too. So you combine those two things, you already can't make the thing go. But as Pete Buttigieg would have said back in the day, he said, we can't really support it with the infrastructure of today, but we'll be able to support it with the infrastructure of tomorrow. That's what we do. That's what Pete Buttigieg says. But this is another kind of aspect of this. This is the funding of the state's roads. Generally speaking, it's from gas taxes, it's from vehicle registration fees, all these different kind of bureaucratic fees that occur, and they vary from state to state. For us, it's generally gas tax and registration fees when you re-register your car every year. In some cities and localities, you have to get an emissions test, and those fees go to fund those things. Yes, Pete, who knows nothing. Indeed. He knows that he apparently likes trains, Deborah. He's a fan of trains, even though he appears not to pay attention to them when they get derailed and cause massive chemical spills. But hey, that's fine. Mayor Pete Trademark can do whatever he wants to do because he's Mayor Pete Trademark. So anyways, this concept of funding the roads by this is going to be a serious problem because Washington State has one of the highest gas taxes in the country. Our gas tax just on the state level is, I think, just shy of California, which is like 53 cents or 57 cents per gallon. Ours is 49.4 cents, if you will, per gallon. Combine that with the 18.4 cents that comes from the federal, we pay an additional almost 68 cents per gallon for each gallon of gas. And those supposedly go to maintaining the roads and the various road infrastructure that comes with that, right? On top of that, we also have, where's the thing? The vehicle registration fees that you do every year. We as a state have voted more than once. I believe we've approved it 2 times now through memorandum that we need to lower our vehicle registration costs because at one point the state promised the citizens here that we would pay no more than $35 for your car registration annually. Well, that's closer to 90 these days, and our lovely Attorney General, who's a huge waste of space, has decided that for one reason or another, all those votes didn't count because somebody misspelled a word on the ballot, or they've put a comma in the wrong spot, or something like that, and had all those votes overturned. But to try to balance out the lack of funding from the gas taxes from all the EVs that people are purchasing, they essentially had to add an extra annual registration fee to all EVs. And it originally started out back in, what year was this? This is 2019. When all these EVs really started to kind of become popular around here, they enacted a $75 fee for hybrid and electric cars when you register your vehicle every year. So that's in addition to your standard, I think at that point it was about $65 for a registration fee for your standard car. On top of that fee, you had another $75, and that ideally was to make up the gas tax that they weren't getting anymore because you weren't filling up with gas, which back in 2019 was still the 49.4 cents. Well, they've realized now that over the years they can't afford to do that because there's too many electric cars now. So they've raised that. So right now, this is actually from a KUOW. This is one of our local NPR sites. Right now, the Washingtonians, which I can't stand that, we'll say Washington State citizens who own plug-in electric cars pay an extra $225 in annual registration fees. A new proposal by State Rep Fay would give hybrid and EV drivers the option to replace that flat fee if they pay 2.5 cents per mile with a road user charge. And this is beginning in 2026. Now, what is the road usage charge? This is what's scary about this entire concept because, like I said, this is coming. If it works here, it's going to come everywhere else that EVs are going to be implemented. If the Biden administration has their way and for somehow or other, through one means or another, the Democrats maintain power on the federal level, this kind of thing will I would imagine be adopted on a much larger scale than just our states. The reason this is concerning because of 2 other pieces of legislation that are going through our state house right now. And these are tools that are required to make this type of transition actually hit where it needs to hit. This is going to be House Bill 1736, which simply says that it requires the application of vehicle registration and vehicle registration renewal include the mileage shown on the odometer of the vehicle. So now, not only are they going to be tracking obviously your license plate and the make, the model, the address, the weight, all the information about what vehicle you're tracking, but they're also going to be tracking how many miles you go per year. Now, that might be a fun statistic. You could probably justify the amount of miles used per year. You can look at trends and go up or down and all this and maybe use that to add more funding towards road maintenance projects or something like that because the roads are getting used and abused more if people are driving more. But in all actuality, it's because of another House bill that is also being floated, which is that road usage charge program. And what this does is it establishes a, quote, voluntary road usage charge program, and this is geared primarily towards electric vehicles at this point. And what it is going to do is it places a 2.5 cent per mile fee on motor vehicle usage of public roadways in the state. Not just electric vehicles. We'll put it that way. It waives the electric and hybrid vehicle registration renewals fees and the transportation electrician fee for vehicles participating in the voluntary RUC program. So I think they explain a little bit more. Let's just keep reading. Limits the total mile fee, the per mile fee of electric and hybrid electric vehicles to combine amount of electric and hybrid electric vehicle registration, renewal, and transportation electrification fee that would otherwise be due if that had been waived. So in other words, depending on how much you drive your electric vehicle, if the 2.5 cent per mile fee based off your mileage is greater than your standard $200, what was it, $225 fee plus registration, you can opt to use the 2.5 mile fee versus the standard fee at that point. Whatever is less, you can adopt if you have an electric or hybrid electric vehicle. Meanwhile, it establishes this other voluntary program where if you're not doing that, you can still sign up for the 2.5 cent per mile fee for some reason. It's supposed to be geared for EVs, but for some reason it doesn't specifically apply to EVs. Only the rebate does. It requires the Washington State Transportation Commission to pursue federal grant funding opportunities for which the RUC program is eligible, mandates the proceeds of the RUC program to be used for transportation system preservation and maintenance, and it sets January 1st, 2030 as the target date for implementation of a comprehensive mandatory RUC program. So we're looking at 2030, putting the mandatory implementation of the comprehensive RUC program into place. So this is essentially a pilot program for what's colloquially called a carbon tax that everybody's been talking about, a per mile carbon tax. Now, why should this worry you? Probably because 17 states with vehicle emission standard tied to rules established in California face weighty decisions on whether to follow the state's strictest in the nation new rules that require all new cars, pickups, and SUVs to be electric or hydrogen powered by 2035. This is specifically the California one. But we're also Washington State, Massachusetts, New York, Oregon, Vermont are among the states expected to adopt the California gas fuel vehicle ban, and along with a number of other states, including Minnesota. So this is why it's important, because it's going to be coming to a state near you. This is a, I hate to say it's Agenda 2030 in full effect, but that's what we're talking about here. So yeah, it's a good deal for the government that wants to squeeze you for every penny you're worth and make you not be able to afford to drive your gas guzzling regular ass car and force you to spend more money and get in debt and do the EV thing like they want you to do, even though you won't be able to charge your car just like they couldn't in California this summer. So yeah, that's the good news. That's the fun news that we have for today. Happy Friday, everybody. We're getting into it. That's actually all I got for you guys today. So before I leave, be sure to be following us over on all the social medias. Donovan, again, is at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram and at Salt of the Street. On Twitter, I am at Big Bird Offie on all the things. And, of course, we are at Salt of the Street on all the things, including Patreon, patreon.com/Salt of the Street. So with that, I wish you all a happy weekend. Happy Friday again, and cheers. We'll catch you.